Welcome to Pop Culture Addicts for another edition of our Friday 5 at 5. Now, every week we try to give you 5 things that are happening in pop culture or things that you should be paying attention to. But this week I thought I would do it a little bit differently because pop culture isn't just about what's happening now, but a lot of times about what has happened in the past and what's led us to the point of where we got to how we got. And one of the things that we see those influences on is, of course, our pop culture, the way that music is made, the way that movies are made, because this person appreciated what the other person did, and so forth. So tonight, I thought that what I would do is give credit to one of my favorite singers, or vocalists, if you want to say, of all time, and that's Scott Weiland. Scott Weiland was lead singer of course, Stone Temple Pilots, and Velvet Revolver for a couple albums, but he also had some solo efforts as well. Scott had this amazing ability to not only be just completely entrancing while on stage, but his voice was able to mimic other singers. You could hear it, and when he sang songs by The Doors, he would try his best and sound an awful lot like Jim Morrison. He was a massive David Bowie fan, and that showed up in a lot of what he did, not just in his solo things, but the work that he did for different covers and things like that. And we're going to address one of those in our list today. That was a spoiler. Anyway, again, these are my top 5 songs covered by Scott Weiland away from Stone Temple Pilots. Number 5, But Not Tonight. Now, originally this was released by Depeche Mode in 1986, and it has a completely different feel than what Scott Weiland did in 2001 for the soundtrack for the movie Not Another Teen Movie, which was a horrible movie, but it had Chris Evans in it before he learned how to say flame on. Scott Weiland slowed it down, put a nice beat to it. It's an amazingly beautiful song, the way that Scott Weiland did it. And not that the Depeche Mode version of the song was bad or should be overlooked by any stretch of the imagination. Depeche Mode was a founder for a lot of the things that we see happening in music today. But being that I was already a fan of Stone Temple Pilots, I was already a fan of Scott Weiland, I just found this version to be much better. Number 4, Surrender by Camp Freddy. Now, Camp Freddy's kind of an interesting thing because they called themselves a supergroup, but they were more of in their own words, a happening. It wasn't any consistent lineup. They had core members who involved Matt Sorum, who was the drummer for Guns N' Roses and Velvet Revolver, Dave Navarro from Jane's Addiction, Red Hot Chili Peppers. There's Billy Morrison, Mark McGrath, Donovan Leitch, and Chris Chaney. Those guys were what they considered the core members, and they would kind of float in and out. For a while, Scott Weiland was considered one of the core members, and so was Slash. They both kind of came in as well. But over the years, they were associated with a lot of different acts. There was Sebastian Bach, there was Jerry Cantrell, Billy Ray Cyrus, Fred Durst, Sully Erna, Ace Frehley, Lemmy. I mean, we could go on and on. As a matter of fact, there's a really cool Wikipedia page about Camp Freddy. I encourage everybody to check it out because they did some really cool stuff together. But one of the best things that they did was for the soundtrack called Employee of the Month, which was a Dane Cook movie with Jessica Simpson. She was not ever part of Camp Freddy, thankfully. So Camp Freddy covered the Cheap Trick classic Surrender with Weiland on vocals, Slash on guitar. It was really well done. It's an amazing take on a classic song that gives credit to the original, but still allows it to be its own thing in its own time. Number 3. Now, this one, technically, yes, it's away from Stone Temple Pilots, but it's also part of the other group that he was in called Velvet Revolver. Now, on their second album, Libertad, they took a lot of different chances than what they did on their first album. And one of those chances was covering the Talking Heads classic, Psycho Killer. Really interestingly done. They follow the bass line, they follow the beat, the rhythm. Weiland kind of slips in and out of his Bowie comparison throughout this song. And it's very well done, and it's one of those that has made its way into my playlist. I listen to it all the time, and I actually prefer this one over the original. Again, nothing against Talking Heads. They did some really cool stuff. David Byrne was out there, but he did some really cool stuff with the Heads. And so very strongly recommend Psycho Killer, originally by the Talking Heads, but now, of course, by Velvet Revolver. Number 2. Now, this is where the David Bowie comparison really comes in strong. On Scott Weiland's second solo album called Happy in Galoshes, which, by the way, iTunes, I have a bone to pick with you. iTunes, Amazon Music, everybody else. Can we please get that album for digital release so that we can listen to it? It's bad enough I can't find it on vinyl, but I really would like to at least be able to listen to the album. That's what I pay that Apple Music money for. Anyway, that's my rant. Enjoy that, and kids, get off my lawn. Anyway, on that album, there are two songs, and Happy Galoshes, there are two songs that really steer very strongly into the Bowie comparisons. There's a song called Paralysis, which if you just close your eyes and listen, it kind of sounds like it could have been a Bowie song. Very well done, beautiful song. And then there's a straight up David Bowie cover. He covers Fame, and you can hear the David Bowie in his voice. You can hear him wanting to be Bowie in the song, but he does such a good job with it that it's not a discredit to Bowie. It's not a discredit to Weiland. It's a very clear appreciation for what Bowie did in past. And not to mention that he has Paul Oakenfold doing the music. So it's got a really cool, almost a techno beat to it. Really well done, very cool dance vibe, really plays in well with the song Fame. So I strongly encourage you guys to check that out. There's a couple of honorable mentions before we get to our number one, though. Now, these are with Stone Temple Pilots, and I wanted to call these out because these are two of my favorite covers of all time. And I think that as a group, as a band, Stone Temple Pilots did a really good job, because when they were clicking, Stone Temple Pilots was clicking, and they were at the top of their game for a while there. But because of Weiland's substance abuse issues and other issues inside of the band, they had a hard time gelling and putting out consistent music there for quite a while. The two honorable mentions that I would like to bring to the table, there was a tribute album to Led Zeppelin called Encomium. And on that album, they did the song Dancing Days, which is a Led Zeppelin classic. And that is an amazingly, wonderfully done version. Very stripped down, almost sounds like it should have or could have been part of one of those MTV Unplugged sessions. Just very well done. The other was a solo that they put out in benefit for, I believe it was one of the John Lennon Foundations, but it was a cover of the Beatles classic Revolution. Just very well done. They rocked it up a little bit, gave it some meat, and it's, for as good as the Beatles are and the good of the Beatles classic of Revolution is, Stone Temple Pilots really made it their own, and they really, like I said, they beefed it up. They gave it a little bit of meat. And so those are my two honorable mentions, and I strongly suggest that you guys check those out. Number one, the Big Enchilada. The number one cover away from Stone Temple Pilots that Scott Weiland did actually came on the Austin Power 2 soundtrack. Austin Powers, The Spy Who Shagged Me. It was with a band called Big Blue Missile. I've never looked up Big Blue Missile for anything else that they've done. I know nothing else about them. The only thing I know about them or care about them is that they were on this soundtrack and they had Scott Weiland as their lead singer. Yeah, for one song. Cover of the Zombies classic, Time of the Season. It's so masterfully done. It's perfectly done. It is so much better than the original. Again, in my opinion, and that probably has to do with me being a child of the 90s and me being a huge Scott Weiland and Stone Temple Pilots fan. But I think it's worth the listen. If for nothing else, there's a couple other really cool songs on that. That's, of course, the soundtrack that has Lenny Kravitz's American Woman, REM's Dragging the Line, and a couple others on there. Some really cool covers that have been brought in to have a more modern feel. But this is number one star of the show in my book. It's a very well done song, and I, again, strongly encourage, notice there's a theme, strongly encourage everyone to check that out. So I hope you enjoyed this Pop Culture Addicts 5 at 5. Sure, we could have talked about Spider-Man No Way Home just like everybody else for the umpteenth millionth time. We could have talked about Eternals and how bad that movie sucks, and why everybody's confused as to how Harry Styles got to be the Titan's brother, and everything else. But sometimes looking in the rear view to appreciate where we're going, well, it's just helpful, and it's a nice break from everything that seems to be swirling around us. That's us. That's Pop Culture Addicts. That's our 5 at 5. Don't forget to click the like and subscribe button. I'm pretty sure it's right down here somewhere. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.